Something huge just happened in Zimbabwe, and most people didn't see it coming. Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has returned after 10 long years with a powerful message. Now is the time. He signed a $1 billion deal with President Mnangagwa that covers fuel, cement, fertilizer, and major infrastructure. This is not just another business deal. This is a deep strategic move that could change Zimbabwe's future. 10 years ago, Dangote walked away because the environment was too risky, too corrupt, and too unpredictable. But now, he believes things are different. He sees opportunity where others still see chaos. That alone tells you something big is shifting. For Zimbabwe, this is more than money. It is a second chance. Someone finally believes the country can rise again. And when the person believing is Africa's richest and most strategic businessman, the whole world starts paying attention. Western oil companies noticed. Chinese investors noticed. Even Zimbabwe's neighbors are now watching closely, wondering what Zimbabwe is about to become. It's not just $1 billion. It's the return of confidence. And that changes everything. Imagine a pipeline stretching from the Atlantic Ocean all the way into the heart of southern Africa, over 2,000 kilometers long. This is the centerpiece of Dangote's deal, and is the kind of project that can shift an entire region's economy. The pipeline starts at Walvis Bay, a deep-water port in Namibia. From there, it travels through Botswana and ends in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe's industrial city. This pipeline means that Zimbabwe will no longer depend on fragile routes through South Africa or Mozambique. No more long truck delays, no more expensive transport, no more fuel shortages caused by politics, border delays, or broken supply chains. Fuel will arrive directly and continuously like water through a tap. Simple, stable, controlled. But here's the interesting part. This isn't just for Zimbabwe. Countries like Zambia, Malawi, and even parts of Angola could benefit from this pipeline. Dangote isn't just supplying Zimbabwe. He is building a giant energy highway that can serve 7 or 8 countries. And once this pipeline is running, Zimbabwe will sit at the center of it all, earning money, attracting industries, and gaining regional influence it never had before. For decades, African countries depended on Western and Chinese companies to build major infrastructure. And these companies often came with huge price tags, foreign workers, and long delays. But Dangote changed the rules. When he built his refinery in Lagos, Western and Chinese companies offered to build it, but their prices were unbelievably high. So, Dangote tried something bold. He said, "We will build it ourselves," and he did. Using African engineers, African contractors, and local supply chains, the final costs became a fraction of what foreign companies demanded. That success became proof that Africa can build world-class infrastructure at African prices without giving away control. Now, Zimbabwe benefits from the same model. Instead of paying $10 billion or $15 billion, Dangote is delivering similar results for just $1 billion. This means more money stays inside Africa. Local skills develop, local businesses grow, and no one from outside controls the project or takes ownership. Zimbabwe gets infrastructure at a fair price. Africa proves its capabilities. And Dangote shows the world that made in Africa can be big, efficient, and powerful. This is not just construction, it is a mindset shift for the whole continent. For years, Zimbabwe has faced one of the worst electricity crises in Africa. Imagine living in a country where the power goes off for 15 to 18 hours every single day. Businesses can't operate. Shops can't preserve food. Hospitals run diesel generators that cost a fortune. Families sit in darkness. Even when gold prices were high, Zimbabwe couldn't take advantage because mines couldn't run their machines continuously. The main power source, the Kariba Dam, dropped to only 9% water capacity. That means almost no power. According to the World Bank, Zimbabwe loses 1% of its entire GDP every year because of electricity shortages. That is billions disappearing. But it's more than numbers. It's lost jobs, closed factories, failed dreams, and frustrated citizens. Young entrepreneurs can't start companies. Investors stay away, and industries move to other countries where electricity is reliable. That's why Dangote's deal matters. The pipeline brings cheaper fuel. Cheaper fuel means more stable power generation. More power means factories can run full shifts, hospitals can operate safely, and businesses can grow again. It's not just energy coming into the country, it's hope returning. This pipeline is not just a metal tube carrying fuel, it is the solution to multiple problems Zimbabwe has struggled with for decades. Today, Zimbabwe depends on long, unreliable supply chains through South Africa and Mozambique. Trucks travel hundreds of kilometers, facing delays, border issues, and high transport costs. But with Dangote's pipeline, fuel will flow directly from the Atlantic coast non-stop, without trucks, without middlemen, without bottlenecks. This means fuel prices drop. The government saves billions in foreign currency. Companies get reliable power for operations. Transport costs fall. Mining becomes profitable again. Industries expand. Jobs return. Even inflation may stabilize because fuel prices affect everything from food to transport to manufacturing. And here's something else. This pipeline makes Zimbabwe less vulnerable to political tensions in neighboring countries. It becomes fuel secure for the first time in decades. In simple words, Zimbabwe stops surviving and starts growing. A strong, steady supply of energy is the foundation of every modern economy. With this pipeline, Zimbabwe finally gets that foundation. Zimbabwe has always been seen as a landlocked country with limited power. But this pipeline changes that image completely. For the first time, Zimbabwe is positioned to become a key energy hub for the entire region. Because the pipeline doesn't stop at Zimbabwe's border, it passes through Namibia and Botswana, and it can easily expand to serve Zambia, Malawi, and even parts of Angola. This means money will start flowing into Zimbabwe instead of out. Countries that depend on Zimbabwe's fuel route will pay transit fees, storage fees, and distribution charges. Local businesses will grow around this new network. Trucking companies, storage depots, fuel stations, repair centers, and new factories that rely on cheap, steady energy. A nation once struggling now becomes a middle point in a huge supply chain. And when your country becomes a middle point, investment follows. Manufacturers choose you. Logistics companies choose you. Investors choose you. Zimbabwe can turn its landlocked problem into a land-linked advantage. With Dangote's pipeline, the country gains a role it never had before. A regional gateway for energy. For Zimbabwe, this is not just economic growth. This is national rebirth. Most companies build factories hoping people will come and buy their products. But Dangote thinks differently. He builds the infrastructure first. The pipelines, storage centers, and distribution networks. Then the demand grows automatically. It's the same strategy Amazon used. They built warehouses before online shopping exploded. Once the system was in place, customers naturally followed. Dangote is doing the same thing with fuel. By creating a reliable supply network across multiple countries, he ensures that his refinery and future expansions will always have millions of buyers ready. When his Laros refinery expands to 1.5 million barrels a day, he won't be worried about finding customers. The pipeline will carry the fuel directly to them. This is how empires are built. Not with guesswork, but with strategy. Dangote isn't just selling fuel. He is shaping the entire distribution landscape of Southern Africa. In simple words, he controls the tap, the pipe, and the market. Nobody else in Africa is doing this at this scale. And once the infrastructure is built, he becomes almost impossible to replace. It's smart, simple, and incredibly powerful. This project is not just about fuel or pipelines. It is about people, thousands of them. When Dangote expanded his Nigerian refinery, the construction alone created 65,000 jobs. Now imagine a 2,000 kilometers pipeline running across 3 countries. Imagine new cement factories, fertilizer plants, storage terminals, and power generating facilities. These will create tens of thousands of new opportunities in Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Botswana. Engineers, construction workers, truck drivers, technicians, welders, electricians, safety officers. Everyone gets a chance. And it doesn't stop with construction. Once the pipeline is operational, more jobs open up. Maintenance teams, fuel analysts, logistics coordinators, plant operators, security teams, and supply chain managers. At least 100,000 jobs will be created across 4 nations. More jobs mean more spending. More spending means more business growth. More business growth means more tax revenue for governments. It becomes a chain reaction of development. And for young people in Zimbabwe who often leave the country looking for work, this deal brings a reason to stay. It brings a reason to dream again. A pipeline is just metal, but what it creates is a future. Whenever a billion-dollar deal is signed in Africa, politics always moves quietly in the background. This Zimbabwe Dangote agreement is no different. Western oil companies and Chinese investors are watching closely because they are used to controlling big energy projects in Africa. But now, an African billionaire is building African infrastructure for African markets, and that makes many powerful people uncomfortable. Inside Zimbabwe, things are also shifting. Both vice presidents were absent during the signing ceremony, and in Zimbabwe and politics, absences like this are never accidental. It suggests that not everyone in the ruling party fully agreed on who should benefit, who should manage the project, and what guarantees were made. Big infrastructure deals in opaque systems often raise questions. Who negotiated what? Who gets what share? And who loses power because of it? This deal could strengthen the president's position, weaken rival factions, and shift alliances. But politically sensitive or not, the economic effect is still huge. Zimbabwe gains cheaper fuel, stable power, and new industries. And Dangote gains a solid foothold in southern Africa. It's not charity, it's strategy. The deal will reshape both political and economic power across the region for years to come. For decades, Africa relied on foreign companies for major projects. These companies came with expensive price tags, strings attached, and workers flown in from their own countries. Money flowed out, not in. But Dangote has shown that Africa can build mega projects using its own engineers at a price Africa can actually afford. This pipeline, if built by Western or Chinese contractors, would cost $1,015 billion. With Dangote's African First model, it costs only $1 billion. That is the real revolution. The jobs stay in Africa. The skills stay in Africa, the profits stay in Africa, and the ownership stays in Africa. Even more important, African countries don't have to give up political control or accept hidden conditions buried in foreign contracts. Zimbabwe gets infrastructure without debt traps. Dangote earns profit without taking over state assets. Everyone wins. This model proves something powerful. Africa does not need to be dependent. Africa can build, innovate, and transform using its own strength. If this model spreads to Zambia, Malawi, Rwanda, and other landlocked nations, Africa could redefine how development is done on its own terms with its own people. This is a new chapter for the continent. This deal gives Zimbabwe something it hasn't had in decades: a real opportunity. Cheaper fuel, steady energy, new industries, and thousands of jobs can change the nation's direction. But the big question remains: will Zimbabwe use this chance wisely? Cheaper energy must lead to industrialization. Factories must reopen. New businesses must be created. The country must process its own lithium, platinum, and chrome instead of exporting raw minerals. If Zimbabwe uses this moment correctly, it can become a manufacturing and mining powerhouse. But there is also a risk. The country might simply replace dependence on Western or Chinese suppliers with dependence on Dangote. Yes, he is African, but dependency is still dependency. Zimbabwe must build its own capacity, strengthen its institutions, and diversify its economy. The pipeline may bring the rain, but the country must decide whether it becomes a flood that destroys opportunities or regulation that grows the future. If Zimbabwe builds on this momentum, the next decade could be one of the biggest turnarounds in African economic history. If not, it will be another missed opportunity. The choice is theirs, and the world is watching.